I want to challenge you today to delve with me into the meaning of a famous Bible passage, a passage that has been a problem for me since I was a child. And it's found in Matthew 5, verse 48. And there, Jesus, at the end of the Sermon of the Mount, tells his disciples and all his followers throughout time, including us today, that he wants us to be perfect, just like his Father in heaven is perfect. And that concept of perfection has been a challenge, especially if you set up the standard as God. How can we even aspire or hope to reach that standard? Is Jesus playing tricks on us? Is he setting up a standard so high to be sure that nobody can ever attain it? And I'm going to offer you today two keys that I believe go a long way to properly understand the meaning of this passage and get a huge blessing and a very practical guidance for our day-to-day life. So let's get started. The first key always is helpful to look at the original meaning of this text in Greek, which is the language in which Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, was written. And here, you don't have to know Greek. I don't know Old Testament Greek, but you can use an interlinear Bible like this and find out what the words actually mean. And interestingly enough, in this passage where it says, "You shall therefore be perfect," the word for perfect is teleioi. If you go to the meaning of it, what you find is that the way it's defined is not perfection in the sense of adhering to some arbitrary standard and set of rules 100% without missing any little detail. Quite the contrary, it encompasses something that has reached its end, it's complete. And in that sense, it has become perfect, it has become whole. Completeness in all its parts. And if you talk about a human being, for example, going through a spiritual journey, you can think of that person having a very distinct goal in mind, a destination that is very clearly set in their mind and being consummated, spending all their energy reaching that goal and going through the necessary stages or steps to achieve that goal. That is the biblical definition of completion. And having understood that, then we could rephrase, and perhaps the translator could have done a better job if they had translated this text in English to say something like, "Be ye therefore spiritually mature or spiritually complete, just like your Father in heaven is spiritually perfect," you see, or complete. This idea of maturity, of developing into the fullness of spiritual understanding, I think it's crucial for us in understanding this passage. The second key to unlock the meaning of this passage, because we still have to figure out what does spiritually mature mean in this context. We have to go back a few verses to see what the context of this is, because after all, when Jesus says, "Be perfect, therefore," that therefore sends us right back to what Jesus said before. And we don't have to go far. We can read the whole chapter. It's amazing. But we can start from verse 43 under the heading "Love for Enemy." And Jesus continues this contrast that marks most of chapter 5, where he says, "You have heard that it was said in the old, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." Here comes this Father in heaven standard. "He, the Father in heaven, causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous." In the parallel passage in Luke 6:36, I believe, Luke presents this statement of Jesus as, "Be merciful, just as your Father in heaven is merciful." The standard that God the Father presents for us to grow into spiritually is, again, not some arbitrary set of cold rules, but it has very much to do with the relationships between us humans. in our family, with our life partner, with our children, with our parents, with our grandparents, but also with our coworkers, with those who we go to school with those whom we interact with on social media, with our neighbor, with the foreigner that we cross paths. In all of those relationships, the standard is love, mercy, be courteous, be kind, de-escalate violence if it comes your way, never initiate it. And if you happen to be offended, if you happen to be crossed, if somebody does something inappropriate or wrong to you, your calling here is not to pay back, is not to escalate the conflict, but rather to reflect God's love and mercy that brings sun and rain and the necessities of life on everybody, whether they happen to be good or bad, at least in our eyes, at that moment. Because in doing so, you give them an opportunity to redeem themselves, to come back to God. And if you don't do that, you become an instrument of evil, amplifying the negativity, the spirit of vengefulness in this world. And so to sum up, what Jesus says here is that we have to grow spiritually and have our model God in heaven, who just like He gives the necessities of life to everybody, irrespective of their moral conduit at the moment, in the same fashion we are called to be ignorant about the fact as to whether somebody happens to be good or bad at the moment, let alone the fact that we can't even tell for sure that aspect, but and to reflect the same love, the same merciful spirit that God is gracious enough to give us all every single day. And I hope this will be an inspiration for you. And next time when you see somebody at work, when you come back home and greet your loved ones, when you meet somebody on the street or in the store, when you go up on social media and post a comment, you will remember this and you will strive, I trust that you will, to reflect this standard of perfection in the sense of reflecting God's love and mercy to our neighbor. And I pray that God will help you do so and that He will help me do the same. Amen.